Welcome back to the King Films College Football Playoff Scenarios show, and in this video I will be showing you every team that I think has a even conceivable chance to make the college football playoff, however much chaos goes into that scenario as possible. So let's get started with Tier 1, and this is pretty easy. Win and you're in for these 5 teams. It'll sort itself out. I know there's 5, but Ohio State and Michigan play each other. Win out and you're in, 1 loss and a little bit of chaos, and you could probably find your way in too. So the teams are as follows. Georgia, great win over Florida. Stay strong, have a challenging schedule coming up. They're undefeated. Same thing with Michigan. Schedule gets more challenging down the stretch. Washington, same thing. Already beat Oregon at home. If you can stay undefeated in a great Pac-12, you're in. Florida State, great win over LSU and has been dominant in ACC play. Same thing. And then Ohio State has finished off most of the brunt of their schedule, still play Rutgers and Michigan down the road. All those teams stay undefeated, win your conference championship, and you're in. Let's get into the more interesting scenarios, which is Tier 2. Win out and you need one thing to happen. In this case, that one thing is that one of the other Power 5 conferences either A, has a 2-loss champion, or B, just the 1-loss champion has a worse resume than you. So from this tier, this is kind of how I rank teams, is Texas is going to be number 1 in this scenario. In terms of win out, they have the best chance, I think, assuming those other 4 teams do not all win out as well. So as you can see, the Big 12 is represented here. And then Louisville would be the last team. So it goes left to right for the top row and then left to right for the bottom. So Texas, the 1 loss to Oklahoma, I think they should be the favorite in the Big 12. Their Oklahoma's lost to Kansas. Oklahoma got a little bit lucky in that Texas game. It was a neutral site, tough environment for both teams. But Dylan Gabriel was clutch there, but Texas lost the turnover battle. Could have done a little bit better. I think they'll win the Big 12 championship. Second would be OU. They just have to win out, and then they'll probably make it. They have that good win over Texas, but Texas has that trump card over number 3 team Bama, which, of course, only lost to Texas and now is undefeated in the SEC West. Clearly, if they win out, I think that they'll be in. But the problem lies if a Big 12 champion is 1 loss in Texas, and Texas has that trump card over Bama. Could the SEC be left out? Interesting one to ponder there. And you've got Oregon. I think they should be the favorite in the Pac-12 with how Washington, compared with Oklahoma after their big wins, has played over these last couple weeks, struggling with Arizona State and then Stanford. Oregon played great, just got a win at Rice-Eccles, but that's their first real win so far. So we'll see what they can do. They still have Oregon State and USC on the schedule, and then obviously what seems to be a Pac-12 title berth right now. Then you've got Missouri. They're still floating around with 1 loss here, only lost to LSU. If they can beat Georgia this week and then win out, I think there's little doubt that they'd make it. They also have that great non-conference win over Kansas State. Maybe Kansas State can make a run in this Big 12, which would way elevate them in this Tier 2. Remember, Kansas State plays Texas this week. Finally, Louisville has that great out-of-conference win against Notre Dame. Horrible loss to Pitt. Probably the worst of these teams we've seen so far because they really got upset. Even Kansas is way better than Pitt, I'd say. But we'll see what happens. Pitt does play FSU, so that could be a little bit of a trap game there. But Louisville also has a game against Virginia Tech, only 1 loss in the conference. At the end of the day, Louisville only has that 1 loss to Pitt. I think that they are the worst in this tier because, you know, they only really have the win over Notre Dame in a weaker ACC right now. Of course, blew out Duke. That was a great win as well, and one that Notre Dame already had. So I think Louisville's the weakest here, but a win over FSU in that title game and then that non-conference trump card against Notre Dame is a pretty good resume for this Cardinal team. Now we get to the more obscure scenarios. This Tier 3 win out, you also need one thing to happen, which is you need 1 Power 5 conference to not get a team. And then these 3 teams also need something else to happen to win their respective championships. For LSU, it's pretty simple. They can actually win outright in the SEC if some things go their way. They play Alabama this week. If they beat them, then they're tied with 1 conference loss against Alabama. Remember that Ole Miss is also tied there in the 3-way. LSU's 2 non-conference opponent, which is what it would come down to if Ole Miss, LSU, and Bama all went out after LSU wins this week. LSU's non-divisional opponents were Missouri and then Florida, so they haven't played Florida yet, but those 2 teams both have a winning record in conference, which is what they need. whereas Ole Miss played Vanderbilt, which is not helping them at all, in Georgia, and then Alabama played Kentucky and Tennessee. Right now, I think it's a race between LSU and Bama for that tiebreaker, but LSU could also have Ole Miss lose. But all of that aside, getting to the SEC championship, LSU does have 2 losses, and one of them is to fellow playoff contender FSU. So they probably need FSU to win out because FSU would have that trump card. Similar thing for Bama with Texas. That's why I put them a little bit lower than last year. So that's the thing with LSU. Then Ole Miss needs 2 things. They need LSU to beat Bama, and then they also need Vanderbilt to do some weightlifting. Of course, Georgia to win out besides that Ole Miss game. Ole Miss would have one of the best resumes of these teams, but since it would just take a lot for them to make this SEC championship, I'm not so sure that we can have them in a better tier. Maybe it would be even easier if they could have Alabama lose another game, maybe at Jordan Hare or at Kentucky down the stretch, but Alabama seems to be rolling, so that seems like a far-fetched idea, because remember, Ole Miss does have that trump card over LSU on the home field there. They also go on to play Georgia, as aforementioned. Then Penn State needs Michigan over Ohio State in addition to themselves winning out, because if they win out, they'd have the win over Michigan. Michigan over Ohio State in the big game would force a 3-way tie. Penn State has played Iowa out of conference, and it looks like their other opponents, including Northwestern, have a slightly better divisional record than Michigan's or Ohio State's, but we'll have to see how that one shakes out. That Big Ten West is really close right now. Remember, Michigan played Nebraska, a resurgent Nebraska, may I add, so that one could flip, but for now, Penn State needs to win out, take care of business, and then have Michigan beat Ohio State so that Ohio State doesn't just take that one via their undefeated record. And then finally, Tier 4, complete chaos. Seeing how the committee rates these teams will give me a little bit more insight, but before you click away, I'll actually do some narrative building for these teams, and not all of them have the same case. So once again, the top tier is the top row, the second tier is the second row, and then the third tier is the bottom row. Again, we'll have some more insight if the committee ranks these teams and where. So for Tennessee, it's actually the most conceivable of these teams, I'd say. All they need is Georgia to have one additional loss. Maybe it's that Ole Miss game that I said earlier. Then if they win out, they're a 2-loss SEC champion. They didn't really play anyone out of conference, but they would have that great win over Georgia. Maybe they avenge the loss to Bama in the SEC championship. Then they just need a 2-loss champion, maybe out of the Big 12 is most conceivable right now. And then Tennessee might even make it in that scenario. Remember, their losses are at Florida, not a good one, but also at Bama in a game that they controlled until halftime. Tough one there, but if they can avenge that loss, maybe they could get in. Oregon State just took a brutal loss against Arizona, but so far, their 2 losses have been really close. Washington State on the road before Washington State knew they were bad, as I like to say. And then also, again, this Arizona game that they easily could have won. They haven't really played anyone out of conference, which is why I'm hesitant. But remember, even if they're not ranked that highly right now, they still get to play Oregon, Washington, and then in that Pac-12 championship, if they can win out and get some things to go their way in the Pac-12. If Oregon State can make it to the Pac-12 championship and there's chaos around them, do not count them out there. Then USC, similar thing. They need to win out. They still have 3 ranked games on the schedule, believe it or not. Washington, at Oregon, and then against UCLA at home, and then potentially the Pac-12 championship game. Again, they control their own destiny in that. Close loss to Utah, a rough game at Notre Dame. Since that schedule is just so tough, even if they're ranked around 25, which is what I think they will be from the playoff committee, that schedule is just so brutal, and the Pac-12 is one of the best conferences that I think USC has a chance here. They need to do a little narrative building. There would have to be a lot of chaos around them, especially in those Big Ten. Those Big Ten teams just can't all be sitting with 1 loss there. But yeah, USC technically has a chance. They really need to turn it around though, because the way they've been playing, there's no shot that they even get close in some of these games. And they probably, quite frankly, need to the doors off of Washington, Oregon, and UCLA to have any shot just to change the narrative around the program after they got beat up at Notre Dame. Then Miami, 2 losses. All right, here's the narrative. It's that you could have easily won that Georgia Tech game if you kneeled down. That's it. They need to win out. They have a pretty brutal schedule down the road. Play FSU, might rematch them in the conference championship game as well, but they've also gotten very lucky. They need to control games more, and remember, they have that trump card over Texas A&M in the out-of-conference. Texas A&M can win out, maybe get some chaos to go their way. Texas A&M probably can't make the SEC West Championship, but that would be a great win if Texas A&M can win out. They still have LSU on the schedule, does A&M. So keep an eye on Miami there. The ACC is probably the weakest conference right now, top to bottom, besides maybe the Big 12. And as you see in this next row, I've got a trio of Big 12 contenders. So here's the narrative as follows. I really didn't want to put these here, but I guess if I was going to put Kansas State, then I have to put all of them. Kansas State, you lost close against Missouri. That could have been rectified. Then you lost against Oklahoma State, a resurgent Oklahoma State. That's why I have to put Oklahoma State here. All three of these teams have kind of gone around each other. The Sunflower Showdowns later in the season, Oklahoma State beat both Kansas and Kansas State. K-State, they found something in Avery Johnson. They've been playing like a different team. I don't know that they have enough strength in their schedule over time because none of these teams really play both Oklahoma and Texas. Kansas State obviously plays at Texas this week, and Texas did beat Bama, so if they can win that decisively, maybe the committee gives them a look. And there's, again, in all of these, you need complete chaos in the other conferences to even get consideration. Remember, Kansas State also lost against Missouri, so if a two-loss Missouri is just sitting there, then they're saying, what about us? But the conference championship usually does trump that. Kansas, you just beat Oklahoma. They don't really have any other contender on their schedule left, so they'll just have to rely on the resume that they've built. Their narrative is that Bean lost them that Texas game. Remember, Kansas did get to play both, lost to Texas on the road, but Bean was playing. Of course, Bean just beat Oklahoma, but they're a worse team with him. Maybe that's your narrative. You should have won that game if you had Jalen Daniels. Not really, though. That was kind of a blowout there, so I'm not sure what you say about that, but that is the narrative. Then Oklahoma State, I guess the narrative is just that that South Alabama game was just a fluke, which obviously it was, but you also didn't have your quarterback in for that game, so maybe it's that, but I think that 29-3 or whatever loss should disqualify you from the playoffs, so I really didn't want to put these teams. Another team you could put on here is Notre Dame, but I think the conference championship will loom large. Of course, their narrative for Notre Dame would be that they lost to Ohio State because they had 10 men on the field, played close. Notre Dame would need the two teams that they lost to, so Louisville and Ohio State, to win out, then complete chaos in the SEC, Big 12, and Pac-12, and maybe Notre Dame could squeak in. They'd also need, they could have USC win out actually as well. Then they've actually only lost and even beat the Pac-12 champion, Ohio State, in the Big 10, and then Louisville in the ACC. So that could be a resume builder, assuming the SEC is able to fall apart, which I don't think is going to happen. Now the dark arts, before you click off this video, just hear me out. Iowa, you've got that punt return against Minnesota that was called back. Maybe that's your narrative there. Iowa would need Iowa State to win out. Remember, Iowa State with 3 losses still only has 1 in Big 12 play. So Iowa State could win the Big 12. That would essentially light their hopes on fire. By Iowa winning out, they'd win the Big 10 West, be able to beat, say, an undefeated Michigan, maybe an undefeated Ohio State, have a trump card over a couple of teams by transitive there. Then they need utter chaos in the other conferences. And then how about this narrative building? Right now, I'm not even sure if Iowa can conquer the rest of their schedule, much less an undefeated Michigan or Ohio State in the Big 10 championship. But if they do, and Bill turns it around, then you could maybe argue that McNamara was the problem all along, and that's why they lost at Penn State. I don't know. Maybe you could. And then you have that kind of BS loss against Minnesota. Probably should disqualify any team if you're losing to Minnesota. But something to think about with Iowa there. You could say that McNamara is the problem. If Hill is able to turn it around for this Iowa squad there, and then finally Air Force, their schedule, this is their own fault because their schedule isn't that good. They haven't really even controlled the teams on their schedule. But if Air Force wins out, the committee's also always sympathetic. Another team that would be worthy of consideration had they just won a close game early on, look at Tulane. Would have a win over Ole Miss. If Ole Miss was able to win out, win the SEC, then Tulane could have made it, but they lost that game. That's kind of propping up Ole Miss's resume right now. So Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave your predictions below.